If logistics does not work in e-commerce, basically e-commerce does not work. Nowadays, the consumer expectation is next day.
Yeah, if not same day.
If not same day. If you don't have next day delivery, you're losing customers. That's basically the rule now here in São Paulo. I mean, I always tell people that are thinking about starting something, I always tell them just do it. Just do it. Don't think about the consequences, what could go wrong, what could go right. Just do it. Mm-hmm. There's only one way to build a startup. That's starting it, right?
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guest is Stefan Rehm. Stefan is one of the co-founders of Intelipost, one of the oldest logistics startups here in Brazil. Stefan, thanks so much for joining me.
To your place.
Yes, this is great. I'm really excited. We've talked about this for a while, getting you on. We've known each other personally for a little while. I think associatively a lot longer because I'm close friends with your co-founder.
Right.
And I'm excited to hear the story of Intelipost as you tell it.
Okay.
So, Intelipost is one of the oldest and maybe most enduring logistics startups in Brazil.
Yeah, one of the.
You guys have been around for quite some time. One of the early startups here, but you are also not Brazilian. So maybe before we get into Intelipost, I'd love to hear how you ended up in Brazil.
Sure.
And your journey.
Yeah. So I'm German.
Yes.
As you know, the name kind of gives it away. But I grew up there in a small town outside of Stuttgart in the south.
Okay.
My parents are all doctors and professors and so very conservative folks, if you will.
Okay.
And then I spent 1 year in high school in the United States, in Michigan. That kind of opened up my view to the world and to the fact that there's more stuff than just my little village, a little city. And that led me to studying abroad in Holland and in the United States. Afterwards in France and a little bit in Turkey.
Cool.
So I had a little bit of emerging market vibes there and already loved it. And then I started to work at Google in Ireland. Okay. Before then going back to Germany and working at a venture capital firm there. So that was 2011, 12. Okay. So startups was the big thing. Everybody was excited. One of those big hype moments and phases. And I was in Berlin, but I didn't love Berlin as a city. Okay. And so I asked my boss at the time, is there anything else for me to do? I love the job, I love the company, I love the VC firm of investing in companies and helping founders grow and so on. I love that activity, but I didn't like the place. And then my boss told me, oh, you know what? We're going to open up an office in São Paulo. Do you want to go?
That was early times to be opening up a VC office in São Paulo. What did they see in the market that made them want to do that?
A big market and a culture that's very close to actually European culture, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if you look at sort of the world and at the emerging markets, Brazil is by far the market that has the closest culture to European culture, and so they thought it's a good idea to just go there and see what happens. Yeah, see what happens. Drop me and then
Okay.
No.
So you came as part of this office?
Yes. I came in 2012 as part of the opening up of this office with my boss, Olivier, a French guy. Okay. And that was, back in the time in Brazil, it was on the cover of The Economist.
The first cover, not the second cover.
The first cover, exactly.
Taking off.
Everybody's excited, the World Cup in 2 years and then the Olympics in 3 years. Yeah. And it was just an amazing feeling. Actually, lots of people coming to Brazil. I think you also came around
2012, 2013 more permanently,
Yeah, so it was an amazing time to be here. But I hadn't been here. I didn't know anybody, and I sort of just arrived here one day, with a passport in one hand.
Did you know you needed to speak Portuguese, or did you think Spanish would get you?
No, no. I knew that Portuguese was the language here, but I didn't speak any of it. I had never been, and I arrived with the passport in one hand and the credit card in the other, and then like arrived on a Monday morning, and my boss was like, "Hey, sit down here and let's start.
Go meet
work."
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it was July 2012.
Okay, and what were the theses that you guys were looking at? What were the areas that you were kind of looking into? What did you think the plays were in the startup ecosystem with that?
Yeah, 2012 was all about e-commerce.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that, but like
Buscapé
in
the
Brazil.
Groupon stuff like
Exactly.
Peixe Urbano, right, was one
Peixe
there.
Urbano was big here in Brazil. In Europe, there's this company called Zalando, which is like by far the largest e-commerce in Europe. And so those, by accident or not, German, the company. And so Dafiti was launching here in Brazil sort of as a spin-off to Zalando. Netshoes. Yeah. So that was the time that e-commerce was the thing to do. Mm-hmm. And as a VC firm, we also like looked at that sector and everything around e-commerce as a thesis to invest.
So that's how you discovered logistics.
Yeah, more or less. When we arrived as a VC firm here in Brazil, we looked at a few of the e-commerce companies in Brazil, and one of the interesting cases was Evino, a company that still exists today and is one of the largest online wine businesses.
Okay.
And my boss and I were just two people at the time. We went to the founders and we're like, hey, so how can we help you guys? Can we be of any like operational help to you? Yeah, and they were like, do you know anything about logistics? And then my boss,
Stefan
said, this guy's German. Yeah, and I'm like, so what does that have to do with knowing logistics? But in his mind, DHL, large company, seemed to kind of go in line. And so apparently I became the expert of logistics and then joined Evino to help their logistics team in like around packaging, transport, and so on.
You joined them full time, or you joined them as like extra staff while being at the VC?
Yeah, extra staff while being at the VC, sort of a couple months helping out full time, but embedded, forward deployed, might be the today's language.
Excellent.
But and then I got to know a little bit about the challenges of logistics in e-commerce.
Okay.
And that was interesting because I had done a similar thing at a very similar company in Germany. Also an online wine business that was also invested by the same investor. Okay. And so I really had like the apples to apples comparison of how logistics is done in Germany versus how logistics, used to be done back in 2012 or 13 in Brazil.
Yes.
And having, done...
They were exactly the same, right?
The 100%. Businesses were the same, obviously, but the challenges were very different and the realities were very, very different. So that's kind of how I had the first impression that, logistics is a little bit more difficult in Brazil than in Germany. And there's this funny story where at one point we went to a warehouse of the retailer, and the guys had just installed the first computer in the warehouse.
Okay.
And
again, this is 2013.
This is 2013.
1985.
No, 2013. One of the first like computers there, and like we're showing people how to like navigate, the systems and so on. And then like one guy, was like, hey, so you need to, take the mouse and like put it here. And then like one guy like took the mouse and put it there. Not the cursor moving, put the mouse, put it there.
Zoolander, the files are in the computer.
Exactly. And then we're like, this is interesting, maybe there's an opportunity there. So
understood. What were I guess at this point, you said you arrived with a passport in one hand and a credit card in the other, and
Right.
you made this investment. What were like the initial impressions of Brazil back in 2012, 2013?
Yeah.
The ecosystem, the city, the culture. You mentioned obviously people were coming for the World Cup and the Olympics, but like, what were your impressions of Brazil other than like, hey, there's real opportunity here?
Yeah, I mean, huge country, lots of people. I mean, here in São Paulo,
Yeah,
right? 25 million people, a sea of skyscrapers.
Yeah.
Not that that's like any different to, let's say, New York or London or anything, but like it's not, when you think of Brazil, you don't think about that, right? And so this was like really impressive for me, and just the people, like amazing people, very welcoming, right? Very enthusiastic about me, a foreigner, being here, and like
Beginning to learn Portuguese.
Yeah, beginning to speak Portuguese, and like not speaking anything but receiving lots of compliments of like, you probably have the same thing, right?
Yeah. Oh wow, you speak so well.
You're so well, and you're fluent, and I barely spoke like 3 words, right?
Yeah.
So it was.
They appreciate the effort.
Indeed.
Especially back then, they really appreciate
Definitely.
it.
And that's kind of like a positive reinforcement, positive, like a virtuous circle where you become more enthusiastic, you make friends easily, and then like, I didn't think about staying here for a long time. I arrived, I had a contract for like 1-2 years, actually 1 year. My visa was 1 year, and then I spent 1 year, then I renewed it for another year.
Well, you were forward deployed, so.
Exactly. And then I was like, maybe I'll stay here. And then now I'm here, 14 years, and it's an amazing country. But like, back to your question, I think people, food, obviously traveling Brazil, right, is amazing. Nature. So yeah, there's lots of great reasons.
Excellent. And I want to get to the moment that, so you're kind of looking at this logistics thing, seeing that there's an opportunity, and I want to talk about Intelipost and the company that you did, but maybe before we do that, can you give us a 101 on how logistics work, and particularly like how it worked then? So like, first mile, middle, transportation, last mile. Can you just kind of explain some
all of the different buzzwords that exist?
Exactly.
Sure. But let me ask you a question. Who do you think invented logistics?
Obviously a German person, right? So
I would love to be able to say that, but no.
I would assume like a Roman general.
Very good. So like, there's obviously not one person that invented logistics, but it's very clear that the concept and the discipline of logistics is actually from military origins.
Right, you've got to supply your staff.
Exactly. So you're conquering a different country. You need to make sure that your soldiers are well fed and have equipment, right? And so this is how logistics was born. And then like somewhere in the 1700, the word logistique, actually it's a French word, came into fruition. And so what I want to say with that is that logistics is actually a very old discipline, right? That's been around for centuries. And the most traditional type of logistics is sort of the maritime logistics, right? Like shipping stuff from, the old continent, Europe, to the Americas, right? That used to be logistics. So it's a very old industry, very resistant also to change and innovation.
People need things, right? So
but it's highly crucial, right? You need logistics. When e-commerce was born, and that was like in Brazil in the early 2000s, people thought, you know what, we're going to sell stuff online, and then we're just going to use the same logistics infrastructure that we already have to deliver the stuff.
Post office.
That was post office. That was sort of like the first idea. And so in the early 2000s, e-commerce comes along, people thinking, we're just going to use whatever we have to deliver stuff. Obviously didn't work out quite as well, because e-commerce logistics is very different. When you look at the value chain, logistics is in every single step, from sort of the raw materials producer to the end consumer, right? And I always give this example. So imagine you buy this piece of furniture, this chair, somebody, cut down a tree somewhere, and took that wood to some sort of factory and manufactured maybe, a wooden plank. That in Brazil usually is in the south somewhere.
Okay.
That manufacturer then probably built a chair and transports that to a wholesaler somewhere in the south as well, usually, maybe in a bigger city, close to, let's say, Porto Alegre.
Right.
That wholesaler then transports the goods to a retailer, probably here in São Paulo somewhere, and then you go to the store and buy it, or go online and have it delivered to your place. So that's kind of like the value chain, and logistics is a big piece in all of the steps.
Right.
Logistics usually means transportation and warehousing, right?
Okay.
We only do transportation, but logistics is both. And we focused early on the last piece of the value chain.
The last mile.
The last mile.
Right.
Which is called last mile because it's
last
from the retailer to your house, which ideally is not longer than a few miles, right?
Okay.
And that piece is the new piece of logistics, right? Because all of the other pieces of the value chain up until then have been around for a long time, for decades, right?
Okay.
Whereas from retailer to you, that's a new piece. That's sort of the last mile, the e-commerce piece, omni-channel. There's lots of different names for that.
Is that a reflection of e-commerce as it used to be that I would go to the store and buy it and bring it home myself, or go to the producer? I mean, depending on how long you want to go back, I'd go to the guy who's making the chair and order it from him and then go get it when it's ready.
Yeah.
Is that kind of this last mile of that piece of it, or what led to it becoming a new piece?
E-commerce did not exist, right?
Okay.
So the last mile used to be you driving to the store, buying it there, and then bringing it back home. Right. That's the last mile.
Right.
It was just done by you and not by the store. And when e-commerce came around, or a little bit earlier, like these catalog companies, right? Exactly. They had been doing some of it already earlier, but on a very, very, very small scale. And then when e-commerce came around, the responsibility of bringing that goods to your place became the store's responsibility. Okay. And that changed basically everything.
There's also kind of, maybe it wasn't as relevant in 2013, but it's more relevant now, this idea of like first mile as well, where you have different providers also that kind of need to be collected from and brought to a warehouse, where it's not one. So this idea of Amazon with multiple sellers or shopping with multiple sellers, you now have this concept of a first mile as well. That was probably not a thing then.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into that now, but this is sort of like the evolution of e-commerce and the evolution of logistics, is that all of a sudden it was not just like one retailer selling their own goods.
Right.
It was actually that reseller using their own marketplace, their platform, to sell the goods in the name of others. And those other companies then also needed logistics solutions, and sort of that became a huge challenge, because now you had lots and like thousands of small sellers to pick up from, versus one huge warehouse where we could just take the parcel. So
what were the key challenges that you saw? Like, so obviously DHL didn't exist, but like, was it an infrastructure problem, a technology problem, an operational problem, all of the above? Like,
sort of all of the above. It was like, so I was put in charge there for logistics, and they told me, hey, we need to do a budget for like next year. What are going to be our logistics costs?
Okay.
And I was like, oof, that's difficult. I don't know. Let me go talk to some people and tell them. So, what is our average logistics cost and so on? And nobody seemed to know. They were all like, we'll find out at the end of the month how much we spend on logistics. Were they charging the consumer for delivery, or were they? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it wasn't even that much of a concern for them.
was not much of a concern. There was also not much control in place.
Right.
So it was more like, okay, I'm charging what I'm paying. So like, okay, but like, it felt very wrong not to know how much it was going to be, right? You should kind of know.
Yeah.
And so I sat down with the responsible person. I was like, so explain me, how do you calculate the actual freight cost, right? So when I go to checkout, and I put in my the product into the basket, and I click on calculate freight cost. Usually there's a little menu that we call like a freight options menu, where it says like normal delivery, fast delivery, and so on. It says like $1 5 days, or $10 2 days, something like that. And so I asked him, explain to me, how do you come up with the cost there?
Those numbers,
And so the guy sits down, pulls out a piece of paper, and said, okay, let me explain to you. Like this, you sum up like this with that, and then you multiply this by that, and then I was like,
square root of pi. Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is complicated, right? Like, so how do you do that for like thousands of parcels per day? And he's like, man, it's difficult. Like, we kind of approximate values, and we don't really calculate it that well. And I was like, for a German, that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah.
Like, we want things to be precise, right? Down to the cent. And so I was like, okay, And so why do we only use Correios, like the postal office? I heard there's also like 2 or 3 other companies. Like, why don't we use those guys as well, right? To have more options. And they were like, yeah, I mean, it's a good idea, but we don't know if they're cheaper than what we're using today. And I was like, why don't you know? It's not because it's difficult to calculate, right? We need to redo all the calculations, parcel by parcel, to see which company is cheaper, so that we can actually see if there's any saving to be done. And this was like on a Friday, and so I went back home, and I thought, maybe we can solve that.
Yeah.
With good old-fashioned Excel. So I put all of the variables and freight tables into like a big Excel sheet. Was like 10 tabs and like 24 megabytes of a file. And then Monday morning I came back and I told the guy, oh, you know what? I built something. I think we can figure out who's better. And the guy looked at it and was like, wow, this is amazing. It's like,
yeah.
He was like, can I use it? I'm like, sure, go ahead, use it. And so for me, that was like sort of the first impression that maybe there was something there. But I left that Excel sheet with the guy. He continued to use it, and then it was time to actually go back to the fund,
right?
Because my mission was completed, and I told my boss that logistics is probably an interesting field to invest in, because it's not a lot developed for various reasons and so on. And then he had an amazing idea of, why don't we invest in a logistics company? Like, if we want to solve logistics, right?
Yeah, let's solve it.
Let's solve it for real, not on a spreadsheet, but like in real life. And so we did a very courageous thing, which is we invested in a logistics company, like a real one that touches packages and does deliveries and so on.
It was a startup, or
it was a startup?
Company? Okay.
It was a startup.
So other people realized that this was a challenge.
This was a challenge, and then we had the sort of the term sheet and the pitch deck of a company called Logi here, which is very known today, huge unicorn, Brazilian unicorn. And then we had this company, and we sort of we like both, and we're thinking, so who should we invest in, And then we had Logi, which had a very shiny pitch deck, amazing founder, but kind of high valuation. And then we had these scrappy guys, Brazilians, and we're like, okay, we're gonna invest in these guys, maybe seems more, like, say, conservative. Well, it was the wrong decision.
Yeah, well, you got Evino, right?
We get Evino right. We got that wrong. So we lost a lot of money there. But I personally went inside that logistics company as well to do like my stint of 2-3 months forward deployed, and figured out that actually on the other side of this of the carrier, the logistics company, it was also like a disaster.
Okay. Can you explain what that means a little bit?
Yeah. No technology, lots of Excel spreadsheets left and right, emails.
This is the company doing the delivery.
Exactly. Okay. So the supply side, right? Okay. We have the shipper side. Yeah. Evino was the shipper. The demand side that generates the demand and then passes on the parcels to the supply side, the carrier, who does the delivery. And, you know, both sides were very unorganized and very manual. And when I finished the stint at the logistics company, I went back to my boss and told him, you know, I think there's an opportunity here of building something in between those two worlds that translates what both sides are doing and connecting those two worlds. And that's sort of like the core idea that was the beginning of Intelipost.
Okay. And what did your boss say when you said that? Did he say go start it, or he said go find that company, or
he was like,
what are you doing?
I mean, he was not convinced at first, right? Because he hadn't felt the problem like I had. So that's, I think that's the beautiful concept of a forward deployment, like that you're in the trenches and feeling the problem. And then when you try to explain that to investors, sometimes, you know, investors don't understand it as well. But after, you know, a few months of talking to several companies in the market and showing that spreadsheet that I had done to a few other people in the market, like the feedback was like crazy positives, like amazing, like can you.
Meanwhile, you did this like in 2 nights with a glass of wine.
It was a shitty spreadsheet, you know, like very bad. And people calling me like, hey, can you send me a version of the spreadsheet, please? I heard, you know, over beer from this friend that you have it, and can you send it to me? And and then that's sort of when we decided to start Intelipost, and that's also when I met Gabriel, my co-founder, and he had a background in consulting. Logistics consulting, and so had an amazing fit there, and started the company together.
So I want to get into that, but I think you mentioned something really interesting, so we're going to digress for a second.
Yeah.
You talked about Logi, and then you said the other company had Brazilian founders.
Right.
And so you're German. Yeah. Logi, I forget the name of the founder.
Fabien.
Yeah. French, right? French. And, you know, same time, Nubank, David Velez, there were this series of foreign founders.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're friendly with a number of them, not necessarily the ones you named, but what was it that I guess, did you being a foreigner give you an advantage in seeing and feeling some of these problems? Like, what was that like?
I mean, first of all, Brazil, like we said, is a very open country. Yeah. So like,
they're accepting of foreigners.
Very accepting, and in many situations, it's an advantage actually to maybe not be from here, because people feel sympathetic, they want to help you, helping out, and so on. Like if I was in France, it would probably be the different, you know, it would be different, would be the opposite, right? So, oh, you're not French, you know, I don't know, let's not work together. In Brazil, I always felt like almost the opposite, like a very warm approach and
maybe overvalued.
Approach. A little bit overvalued, like.
You're a foreigner that speaks Portuguese. You must be really smart.
Exactly. And so I think that gave us foreigners a little bit of an edge at the beginning. Yeah. But then also the notion of coming here unbiased and sort of like seeing the things from a fresh perspective. And there's like a bunch of ideas, like David Velez with the bank account. One of the other business ideas that I had before actually starting Intelipost was like, hey, PJ, like the independent contractors is a thing. Like, why not building a company around that?
Yeah, I tried. Didn't work.
Yeah, but there's lots of other companies that worked out in that field, right? So I think it was just like this questioning the status quo, and then having the courage to actually follow through and try something, right? And maybe the naivete to actually try it.
Yeah, there's an element of, you use the word accepting, which I liked, because there's an element of the Brazilians kind of accepting the problem, and it's just like, oh, that's the problem, and that's the way that it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it gives you, it's trade-off on both sides. One is like, oh, but you see the problem, and you're going to go try to solve it.
Yeah.
And some of them are solvable, and some of them are that way because they're not solvable at this point.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of being able, like you said, to have the courage and the naivete at the same time to try to do both, because, 12 years later, you're still at Intelipost solving that problem.
I mean, I'm always reflecting about that. Like, if someone had told me, at the beginning of the company, hey, if this company does not work out, it's a 4-year journey.
Yeah.
But if the company works out, it's a 10 to 15-year journey. Probably I wouldn't have started it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, probability of failure is probably like 80%.
Yeah.
So, like, why would you start something if you're gonna waste 4 years of your life, in a business that fails? So, but I was naive. I didn't know that. So I did it, and in the end, it worked out.
Cool. What was it that you guys? Obviously, you didn't just use your spreadsheet. You did something else. So, what was it that you guys were trying to solve?
Yeah.
And how did you approach that?
So in a more structured way, there's 2 problems that we identified, that actually I identified at Evino.
Yep.
That I then took on and translated into the company problems that we solve, right? The first problem was that in e-commerce, if you don't have low shipping costs and fast delivery speeds, your customers don't buy. Right? So,
and those are integral problems in Brazil, where there's poor infrastructure and.
Sure. Yeah. But that's actually structural to e-commerce anywhere in the world.
But I'd say probably more of a challenge in Brazil than a lot of other places.
Yes. And 55% of people that are at checkout, ready to buy, end up abandoning the cart because of the logistics options they see. 55% is huge, because if you think about it, if you solve that, you can double your revenue without doing anything different, right? Yep. And it makes sense, right? If you buy a toothbrush for like $5 and shipping costs $5, it makes more sense to go to a local store and buy it there, right? And so that was one problem that we saw, that we identified, and the other one was 70% of customer complaints were about tracking issues of the order. So the famous question, where is my order?
Yeah.
I purchased something, you told me it was going to arrive in 3 days, but it's been 4 days, it's not here. Yeah. Where's the order? And that used to be like 70, 80%.
Okay.
Now it's down to like 50%. So also still not solved, still a problem, but better, right? And so those were the 2 main problems that we built Intelipost on as a company, and then we built the product to as a cloud native SaaS company for the retailer to contract and improve their freight calculation and freight visibility for tracking.
How was the reception to this problem from the market? And I ask it both from like your guys' ability to fundraise and get the money to build the company, and also from the perspective of your kind of sales funnel, and kind of, did your clients and potential clients like realize that this was the problem they needed to solve for?
Yeah. So fundraising was kind of easy because I basically convinced my boss to be the first check in the company. So that was lucky, if you will.
Yeah, you convinced him 3 times. This is pretty impressive.
kind of lucky. And back in the day, there were like 4 VCs in Brazil, so it was different times. We raised like 1 million euros, which at the time was like 3 million reais. So it was quite a lot, actually.
Especially at the time, yeah.
Especially at the time, for an idea, basically. And that was great. That definitely gave us sort of a heads up and like a good start. But then the market feedback was very positive from the very start. From the very start, like the guys with the spreadsheets that knew that we had the solution were also our first customers. And coincidentally, Dominique and Lodovico from Amaro, so 2 other foreign founders that had built an e-commerce startup, were one of our first customers. There was Evino, there was Mundo Verde, which is like a healthy foods retailer that was also had like an international founder. So like through the international founder community we're kind of like the first customers there. And helped us build
products.
Exactly, like betting on the other founder, and that gave us sort of a good market feedback from the very start.
What were the first things you did to address the 2 problems that you mentioned? So how did the software work initially in terms of helping to provide that visibility on cost?
Yeah.
And I guess reduce it,
right?
And also visibility on where packages are.
Yeah. So in logistics, the way that costs are structured is in so-called freight tables, which is an Excel sheet with several sheets and different tables, very unstructured, actually. So our idea, and this went really back to the first prototype in Excel, was to take that raw material and find a way of abstracting that in a generalized way internally in the system, so that we could easily import all of the freight tables from all of the carriers into our system. And so whenever someone was at checkout trying to buy a product, our system had an algorithm that that followed every single step in the manual to calculate down to the cent the correct freight cost.
Right, I'm going from Jardines to Brooklyn. This is the rate table of these 5 companies.
Yes, and like it's 2.5 kilos. Your freight has a value of 200 reais. And by the way, that area where you're delivering is kind of a high risk area. So all of that influences the freight cost, and this turned out to be like a very complex algorithm where we employed some pretty good engineering to actually make it calculatable in lightning speed, so that the e-commerce company would be able to display the freight cost at checkout. And not just an approximation like the other guys, but like really like $2.32 basically. That was kind of like a new sort of notion for most of the people, and kind of innovative in a way that we approach the problem. Because it's like freight calculation in itself had been done, in the maritime shipping and container shipping space already, but not in e-commerce, because that was new.
And now, I guess, e-commerce is you guys are setting up and building your algorithms and offering the service, and e-commerce is evolving. And becoming more of an everyday thing, more of a trusted thing. The dependency on e-commerce is growing. The types of services that the e-commerce companies are offering. Talk to me a little bit about the evolution of e-commerce, and I guess over the last 10 years, and how you guys have evolved around that problem.
So I remember one of our first pitch decks said, Brazil, 3% of total retail is e-commerce.
Was it that big at the time?
It was that big at the time, very small actually, right, compared to today, but so it was a 3%, and at the time, the United States was like 9%. So in our pitch deck, it was like one of the first slides was like, hey, we're at 3% market penetration.
But we're going to get here.
We're going to go to 9%. So basically the market is going to triple.
Yeah.
Now, 12 years later, we're at 12% penetration here in Brazil. So really the market has grown a lot. And I think we benefited from that, obviously. We surfed that wave.
Yeah.
But I also want to believe that we kind of helped the market be able to do that, that growth.
Yeah.
Because if logistics does not work in e-commerce, basically e-commerce does not work. So I think we benefit, but also contributed.
Cool. What were some of the early missteps, the learnings? What was the environment like at the time? Convincing people, you convinced Gabriel to leave a good job at a big consulting company to join a startup. Now nobody wants to go to consulting, they all want to work at a cool startup. How has that been, and what were some of the early experiences, and how has that changed to now?
Yeah, working at a startup was not a thing, right?
Yeah.
Back then. It was
there was 15 of them, that was it.
Yeah, and probably the word startup, people didn't even know at the time what that was. And so it was difficult to convince people to leave their job, to come to work for this small company in a small space. It was no frills, right? We always had the mindset of let's not project more than what we actually have. We're all down to earth and heads down, work first, and then do marketing. So it was always our philosophy. And it was difficult to get good people right at the beginning. Fortunately, we hired a very good sales director early on. So that was a big key achievement, I think, for us that helped us get a lot of early customers who were not willing, to bet their future, the logistics future, on this startup, on a German guy who barely, spoke Portuguese.
Yeah.
And didn't even have a product, who said that he was going to build something but didn't have anything. So that was tough. We didn't have real clients for the first 2 years, if you will.
Okay, it was more. Well, I guess what was the first 2 years? Just building out.
First year was building product, building the algorithm, figuring out what to build actually, what clients needed. So
were you working iteratively with some other players there?
Yes.
They were kind of So
Yeah.
you were helping solve. You guys were forward deployed with some players.
Yes.
Helping them solve their problem with the idea that it would turn into something afterwards.
We basically had 3 early customers that still are customers today. Evino, Amaro, and a company called Pet Love.
Yeah. We had Talita on the episode a year ago.
Yeah, so Talita is amazing.
Yeah, she's great.
The company was founded by Matzner,
Yeah.
who is also an amazing person. He was one of the few people who saw something there. And signed a contract knowing that we had nothing. But had the confidence that we were going to build something. So we built the product in the first year, iteratively with a client, failing a lot, correcting it fast, and.
But what are some of the other challenges that these logistics companies face in making these orders?
I think the 2 main things that changed was, 1, volume grew or has been growing like crazy.
Which allows for improvements, right?
Which allows especially for cost reduction.
Yeah.
So logistics is all about consolidating volume and making sure you put as many parcels together in the same truck. So you can deliver, 5 parcels in the same building. That's much lower cost per stop.
Right, which maybe is why it's 41 days. You need to get a sufficient amount of goods to go to that place. Yeah.
Exactly. Otherwise, obviously, if you have a plane that goes from here to the place, you can be much faster, but it's very expensive. So volume has increased drastically, and what has also increased, what you mentioned, is delivery speed, right? So in 2012, like you said, a 5 business day delivery in São Paulo was kind of the norm.
Justo, yeah.
It was like the normal thing. Nobody complained.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, 5 days, sure. The best companies maybe had 3 days. Nowadays, like the consumer expectation is next day.
Yeah, if not same day.
If not same day. So if you don't have next day delivery, you're losing customers. That's basically the rule now here in São Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
If you have same day, great, maybe you'll win additional customers, right?
Okay.
But if you don't have next day, for sure you lose customers.
Okay.
And that's like a 3 to 5 times increase in 10 years. So
yeah,
it's pretty big change. Yeah.
What else is changing about logistics and how e-commerce is changing? Like the type of thing that you buy is also quite different, right? Like you can order your groceries, not just iFood, but like your groceries. Like how does that change the logistics consideration when, I'm asking somebody to go to a supermarket and get things for me or use some sort of dark grocery store?
With the pandemic, the e-commerce penetration made a real step. So everybody started to buy online, even your grandma and your in-laws, who were very afraid of actually buying online and afraid of suffering some sort of fraud, right? Nowadays, it's really everybody. And everybody wants to be able to buy everything online and receive it as fast as possible, right? So food delivery really popularized this notion of I can receive it in the next 30 minutes and pay, nothing or 3 reais. And from a logistics standpoint, that's a nightmare, actually. It's fast, so extremely high service for very low cost. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult to do. But on the flip side, I think what this also meant was that logistics really became a fundamental part of the strategy of most of the companies, right? So it used to be a cost center, like we pay money for logistics and we need to reduce those costs, and like I don't even want to talk about logistics, just reduce costs. That was like the common sense. With the pandemic or after the pandemic, logistics really became a topic in the boardrooms, right? Where C-level discussions were held about how can we improve logistics? Should we buy a company? Maybe should we internalize this? How can we improve our technology for logistics? And that really gave our segment, our category, much more visibility, with our customers, and that was great for us. The M&A sector also heated up. Lots of companies were acquired and so on. That was also ended up good for us because we're one of the few ones that are around. All the other ones either enduring, like I said, were either acquired or went out of business.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about at the beginning, you said if somebody had told you when you started 4 years and an 80% failure rate, or 14 years and still doing it, you might not have taken this journey.
Yes.
Kind of what other reflections do you have on the last 14 years? What were some of the missteps, some of the learnings, and maybe some advice for people that are considering whether they want to start what they're hoping is a 5-year journey, but will either be a 1 year or a 20-year journey?
Right. I don't believe I don't believe it. Like a successful startup is 10 to 15 years, an unsuccessful one is 4 years. Anything else, you're not really trying, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I always tell people like that are thinking about starting something, always tell them like, just do it. Just do it. Don't think about the consequences, what could go wrong, what could go right. Just do it. There's only one way to build a startup, and that's starting it, right?
Yes.
And so I'm very and that's why I also try to help a lot of founders that are starting out and need help. Contribute good part of my time helping other entrepreneurs in starting their companies. And I think maybe one other tip that I would give is like always start with a problem, right? So there's many founders out there that are like, hey, I want to build a startup. What should I do?
Yeah. What's the problem you felt?
And then like my answer is like, if you ask that question, probably you're not at the right time, because in your life maybe to start a company, because a good startup idea is something that you realize when you're at a job and you're working day and night and you realize, man, this is shitty. This should be better.
Yeah.
Then that's a good problem to tackle, in your own venture outside of where you're working. So that's like a good approach, or something that you feel, where you feel the pain in a different way. So yeah, that's sort of my reflection looking back, is that I had that problem at Evino. I saw it, I felt it, and then that gave me sort of the confidence that I was pursuing something that was a real problem that people needed.
Yeah.
Whereas it was not always clear whether, it was a big problem or a problem that many people had, maybe just a few people, maybe all the foreigners in Brazil only had their problem, the other ones didn't. But it gave me the confidence to follow through and do it.
Amazing. I always like to ask at the end of these conversations 2 questions. So one is the name of the podcast, Brazil is not for beginners.
Yeah. What
does that expression mean to you 14 years into a 2-year, maybe 2-year stint?
Yeah. Let me answer that with a little story.
I love it.
So when we started building the company, so this must have been in the 2nd year.
Okay.
I was talking to a large client in Brazil, a large fashion retailer. They're a publicly listed company, so they need to follow all the rules and be in compliance with everything, right?
Yeah.
And talking to the client, they told me, hey, in São Paulo, there's a law that one of the delivery options that you need to offer by law is a scheduled delivery. Okay? And that scheduled delivery needs to be, by law, the cheapest option. And, I heard that and I listened and I was like, okay, interesting. That's the first time I'm hearing about this. After 2 years,
And years being on the side of delivery.
Yeah, being in the trenches and talking to customers, and so I was like, oh, okay. So I dug a little deeper, and I realized, yeah, it's true. There's a law that says the cheapest delivery option needs to be a scheduled delivery in São Paulo. And then I was confused, because I'm German. I came to Brazil, and I was like, there's a law needs to be followed, right? And then, I talked to all my other customers and I was like, hey, I think, I want to be helpful here, I think you're not following the law. There's this law where you need to do this. And they were like, oh, yeah, that law exists. I'm like, and? Yeah, that law didn't take off. Or in Portuguese, actually, It's more funny. It's like, essa lei não pegou.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean this law didn't take off? Like, what does that mean? And they're like, yeah, basically this law exists, but nobody follows it, and nobody also enforces it. So you can actually forget about it. And so for me, it was like a big boom, as in, wow, this is not for beginners. Which law? How do you know which law didn't take off?
Yeah.
And which law takes off? How do you know that? I guess it's not for beginners.
Yeah, I love it. That's a really great story. So what does that law still on the books or no?
That law still exists. Nobody follows it. But as a good company, we allow our customers to follow the law if they want.
Okay. Because I see scheduled delivery, it's usually not the cheapest option.
Usually,
it depends on what it is.
Oh, so here's another thing.
Okay.
Here's another thing. There's what they call a pegadinha. So I don't know how you would translate that to English, but it's like
Gotcha.
an easy way, like a way around this. So what people do is they offer scheduled delivery for free, but they say, hey, you can only schedule that delivery in 90 days.
Okay.
And then nobody chooses it. So an elegant solution to like a problem that shouldn't exist.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. The other question I really like to ask, and you gave me one here with Ole now Pego.
Yeah.
But is there an expression or a habit or something that's just particularly Brazilian that foreigners don't get, or that you realized in your time here, like, oh wow. So there's a few things that have kind of come up. Vamos marcar, right? Like understanding that doesn't actually mean that we're going to get together.
Yeah.
Something that's been throwing me off recently is, when I travel, I've been here long enough now that when I see a woman, I lean in to give her a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah.
When I'm abroad, that is not. I was just in Germany.
Yeah.
I did not try to.
Not recommended.
Yeah. So, anything that you'd highlight for people that are listening or watching?
Yeah, I mean, what I've come to appreciate here in Brazil is like this little moment before or after a meeting.
Yeah.
Where you're not in the formal piece of the meeting. You're like chatting to the different people. Where like sometimes over a cafezinho, like a little coffee, which is where you decide the real things, right? So in the meeting, it's all nice with lots of people in the room, and people are putting their arguments out and whatever. But in the like 2 minutes between the meeting room and the elevator, sometimes the deal is made or not made, or you understand that competitive information that you need in order to like improve.
Yeah, the hallway conversation.
The hallway conversations, I think you have that, they're like in like the what is it called?
It's almost more important.
Yeah, the water cooler, right? But in Brazil, I think it's a little bit more institutionalized, right? Yeah. You never start the meeting on time, you never finish on time, you always do a little conversation before and after. And I've come to appreciate that.
Okay.
And I've tried to do that also like in other countries or with other people in other cultures, and it's not always successful or appreciated, right? Where people are like, hey, what's this guy trying to do? Like talking with me after the meeting, like this is weird,
Sometimes it works really well though, because sometimes you're like more personable as a salesperson. So there's you have to read the situation, but it's a good skill to have, I think.
It's a skill
institutionalized here,
yeah, and it's something that I learned here in Brazil, in how to do it and how not to be like invasive.
Yeah.
Or like
you can't be too direct when you start a meeting. You need to
exactly.
You need to lead into it a little bit
and
understand the situation.
That's where also like being a foreigner in Brazil really helps, right? Because
you can make mistakes. You
can make mistakes, and at the same time, like you can be like, oh, I'm German, I'm not really sure how this works, even though I kind of know after 14 years,
Yeah.
So people are more forgiving and also more open. Yeah.
It reminds me of the stories of the Japanese CEO that speaks perfect English but brings a translator so that they can read the situation and take time to respond. So I like that.
That's a good one, yeah.
Stefan, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. How can people follow you, reach out to you, engage with you for Intelipost, but also, like you said, you give back a lot and speak to a lot of founders. So how can people reach out to you and learn more about
you? Yeah, I mean, listen, I love to help entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of angel investing. I help some of the VC funds here in Brazil in their selection for companies. I'm also part of Endeavor, which is like an entrepreneurial organization. And so I really love to give back because there have been people that helped me in the past.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this generational contract of like helping the new generation of founders to be successful, more successful. And so, yeah, I mean, reaching out on LinkedIn is probably the easiest.
Excellent.
Or through you. I don't know. You can pass on anything you receive. Yeah.
I will do. Excellent. Stefan, again, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed. And yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully people reach out and you get some good
Good feedback.
contacts.
Yeah, hope so. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.